Hello, I am here today to talk about food addiction. But first, I want to tell you a little about who I am. I am not a healthcare expert. I am not a scientist. I am not someone who is credentialed or working in the healthcare field or industry. What I am is a recovering food addict. I've come to you today to make this video for two reasons. One, I wish to help others like myself. If you are struggling with food addiction, then I wanted to come here to have this video just to have a discussion about food addiction. And also, it is my hope that those who are in the research scientific fields, those who are in the medical community, and those who are in the healthcare industry will be able to do more research, do more work to help support those who are struggling with food addiction. I have notes here today, so you may see me look down. So, the first thing is, what is food addiction? Food addiction is beyond weight loss. It is more than emotional eating, and it is similar to substance abuse. So, we'll go into those things more. When I say that it is beyond weight loss, there is an understanding that obesity is a problem, that obesity leads to illnesses and diseases. But food addiction looks at the cause of obesity. We understand that obesity has many causes, but food addiction and overeating is one of the leading causes of obesity. And so there is an entire industry set up to deal with and address weight loss. But food addiction is something that is different than weight loss. We also know that there is a medical community that is working with psychiatrists and psychologists to deal with emotional eating. And emotional eating deals with stress eating, anxiety eating, eating because of your emotional responses. When I'm talking about food addiction today, I am not talking about emotional eating. And we know when we talk about addiction, there are some common addictions that people talk about, such as substance abuse. Food addiction is very similar to substance abuse. It's not quite the same, but it is very similar to that. And some of the work that is done around drug addiction and alcohol addiction is some of the work that I would like to be seen worked with around food addiction. So let's break down food addiction. What is it? Food addiction is when you compulsively consume foods that are addictive or trigger foods. These are foods that are naturally high, or sometimes artificially naturally high, in salt, fat, and sugar. When you consume these foods, it's very difficult to stop eating these foods. In fact, these foods trigger you. They stimulate hunger. They stimulate hunger and cravings. The more you eat these foods, the more you want to eat these foods. So again, food addiction is when you consume trigger foods or addictive foods that cause you to compulsively eat, that cause you to overeat, and that cause you to binge eat. And this compulsive eating often leads to weight gain, obesity, and a host of other health-related problems. So that's what food addiction is. Now let's take a look at trigger foods. What are trigger foods? There are foods such as apples. And apples, we know a lot about apples. They do have sugar. They contain sugar. They contain fiber, and they contain high water content. When you eat an apple, you eat an apple and you're done, typically. But if you eat something like, say, Skittles, a high sugar candy, when you eat Skittles do not contain any fiber. They do not contain any water content. They are manufactured to make you want to eat them and to eat a lot of them. And the body does not regulate Skittles the way it regulates apples. I have identified certain foods that are high in salt, fat, and sugar as triggering or addictive foods because they cause people to overeat or compulsively eat and compulsively consume these foods. Some examples of trigger foods would include things like sweets like donuts, ice cream, cookies, cake, pie, or it could be savory, salty foods such as chips. There is a famous commercial, I won't name the exact product, but it says, once you pop, you just can't stop. And that's literally what happens with trigger foods. Okay, so now that we've identified what food addiction is and what trigger foods are, what do we do with that? How do we manage food addiction? This is my position on this. Once again, I told you that I'm not a healthcare expert, but I am a recovering food addict. So I believe that you can manage food addiction by doing the following things. The first thing, you need to acknowledge that you're a food addict. If you happen to be suffering from chronic weight gain and obesity, if you suffer from constant binge eating, constantly overeating, compulsive eating, and you feel that you're out of control with this, that you have tried countless diets and nothing has worked for you, you could possibly be addicted to certain substances within foods. And so just acknowledging that you are a food addict is the first step to managing your food addiction. The second thing is identifying trigger foods. Now, when it comes to other substance abuse, people are told to pretty much cut out whatever substance they are abusing. So if you are abusing drugs or alcohol, you're told to stop drinking or stop using the drug. When it comes to food addiction, it's a little different. You can't just say stop eating, but you can stop lying to yourself. All food is not created equal. I don't think that all food is created equal. There are some foods that certainly do trigger this response. And so identifying what are the specific foods that trigger this addictive response is very necessary if you're going to manage the food addiction. So once again, I said that these are foods high in salt, sugar, and fat. We know the big culprits: chips, cookies, candy, things like that. Those are the foods that are trigger foods, but you know personally what those foods are, and you should inventory and try to figure out what are all of the foods for you that you identify as trigger foods. And the third thing that you should do is nourish your body. I say that third because I feel like if your body is already working as effectively as it can, because you are feeding yourself nourishing foods, this will give you a great chance to fight your addiction. And so I think if you're eating an unbalanced diet, you're malnourished, you're constantly hungry, and you're starving yourself, you're going to have a very difficult time managing your addiction. So I say nourish yourself. Learn how to eat for your body, to eat so you can be strong. And you should talk to a nutritionist about ways you can go about nourishing your body and get some education on that. The fourth thing is abstinence. And so just like in substance abuse addiction, I believe that it's critical that you practice abstinence. And why I say practice it for a food addict is because abstinence for a food addict is a dance. You're going to balance nourishing your body and taking care of yourself with managing your addiction. So you're going to eat the foods that help you to live, but you're going to try to abstain from the foods and substances that feed that addiction. So once you've identified those trigger foods, you'll work on abstaining from those foods. Now, what's important to note is that there are a lot of pitfalls to managing food addiction. And here are some of the pitfalls. One of the first pitfalls is diet culture in and of itself. If you're eating to manage your body size, to regulate your body size, there's a whole different set of rules that you have to follow. I am not suggesting that you go and implement some kind of diet in order to manage your addiction, because the goals are different. What you may have to do to get skinny is not the same things that you have to do to manage your addiction. Managing your addiction is very straightforward. It's identifying those trigger foods and abstaining from those trigger foods, regardless of what the scale says. Okay, so that's something that you have to investigate for yourself and work out. But I think that is one area that can trip you up when you're trying to manage your food addiction. The other thing is our overall food culture. When it comes to substance abuse such as drug and alcohol addiction, we know that those substances are very, very dangerous. And we have told people to stay away from these things. But when it comes to food addiction, our food culture says we should celebrate food. And we often celebrate foods with addictive and trigger foods. We have festivals and holidays. We even give these foods to children, and they're often considered harmless until someone is experiencing obesity. And so it's very important that you arm yourself to deal with the food culture, because it's going to be there. And one of the things in recovery for all types of substance abuse is honesty. You have to be honest with yourself as an addict. And it's very hard to be honest with yourself when you're surrounded by people that are telling you that what you're doing is normal, that what you're doing is fine, and what you're doing is okay. You have to remember at all times that your brain chemistry is different and that your body is different, that you are dealing with some type of disordered eating, and so you have to protect yourself. And so you have to be very proactive in that. The other thing that can harm you when it comes to managing your food addiction is an all or nothing attitude. It's very easy to be a defeatist and to say, I can't be perfect, so I won't do this at all. That's why I don't want you to connect this to your body size or weight loss. Managing your food addiction is just about managing your food addiction. And you don't need to have 100% compliance. As I said, it's a balance between nourishing your body and identifying these trigger foods and staying away from these trigger foods. You have to remember, you've probably been likely consuming these foods all your life. You have surrounded by people that say it's perfectly normal for you to eat these foods. And you're going to trip up. You're going to fail. Failure is a part of the program. That's why I consider it continuing recovery, continuing management, and you have to actively do this. You're not going to get to a point where you're just perfect, fine, there's no consumption of trigger foods in your life. It's always going to be an ongoing battle and an ongoing struggle. But every single day, every single time you open your mouth to eat, you have an opportunity to try again. In another video, I will probably share my personal journey and some of the things that I do personally to help with my food addiction. For now, I've given you an overall look at what food addiction is, what it is not, and what you can do about it. So I hope this video has been helpful to you if you are struggling from food addiction. If you are in the healthcare industry and have stumbled across this video, I thank you and appreciate you for watching this video. And it is my hope that the healthcare industry will do more in terms of research, support, and work to help those who are struggling with food addiction. Thank you.